by the way, for being bold enough to say things that I think a lot of people on the right believe, but are too scared to say because they're scared of the blowback. And you clearly are not. I think it's one of the reasons that you are going to make an excellent senator someday. But I want to ask you about these credentialed elites. You know, there are a lot of people who are really important, the ruling class in our society. And I don't mean just politics. Politics is an important part of it. But I mean politics, media, business, academia. We have a lot of credentials elites who tend to live in coastal cities. They live in trendy neighborhoods. They are childless. They don't encounter families very much. And yet they have an incredible outsized influence on families all over the United States that they're totally separated from. Your thoughts about this reality and how we change it?
Yeah, it's a really important point, Steve. And I was looking at the leaders of the Democrats and realized how many of the next-gen leaders of the Democrats, it's Kamala Harris, it's AOC, it's a lot of folks like that, they're not planning to have kids. They don't have kids. And I noticed that, not having children, I think, changes the way you think about the future of the country. If you don't have skin in the game, you pointed to some of the studies that suggest that parents think about the future of the country in a different way. And I realized that we're being ruled by a childless elite. And it's not just they don't have kids. Of course, a lot of people don't have kids for different reasons. It's that they're proud of the fact they don't have kids. They think it's bad if you have kids. They think it's bad for the environment. They're proud of their abortions. They shout their abortions from the rooftops. We're entering a new era where the leaders of the left are not just without kids. They're proud of that fact, and they look down on people who invest their time and their future in their children. And that is a dangerous place to live as a country.
JD, so I'm curious. I take a different stance, a little bit different than you and Steve, respectfully. There are about a quarter of the population that chooses not to have kids. These are perhaps some of the hardest working, most career-driven people that you'll find. Are we not painting this group with perhaps a broad brush? Because not everybody is of that mentality that, I'm not doing it because of climate change. Some people just choose a little bit differently. And should those people not be excluded because perhaps society's changing a little bit? Perhaps people are seeing the American dream as, focusing on their careers. What are your thoughts?
Well, look, I've got people in my own family who haven't had kids for various reasons. Of course, I've got dear friends who haven't had kids. But I think it's one thing to say that some people are going to choose not to have children, and another thing to say that we're living in a country where having children is now looked down upon. And I think that's really where we have to focus our attention. Look, you do not have a future as a country unless you have the next generation, unless you have babies, unless you have viable, healthy families. And I think so much of what's going on in the left, especially, is that they've become obsessed with this idea that having a kid is like an old-fashioned thing. It's something the previous generations did. Look, if people don't want to have kids, that's their choice, but we shouldn't turn it into a lifestyle brand, and we shouldn't point our finger at those hicks in middle America who have children, because those are the people who are going to actually be the future of this country. Whether we like it or not, if you don't have kids, who's going to take care of you when you're old? Who's going to, care for our elderly? Who's going to work the jobs that are necessary? If we don't have children, the answer is nobody.
Sure. JD, let's get down to policies here then. What are some policy proposals that you're putting out there that will create stronger families?
Yeah, Steve, I agree with a lot of the proposals I've seen you put out there. I think Josh Hawley has a really interesting idea for basically how to encourage and give, more resources to parents, because as you know, our current tax code actually penalizes people who are married, and Josh Hawley has an interesting proposal for how to change that. I really like the proposal of this guy, Viktor Orban in Hungary. I think we could take it here in the United States, where basically they give a really generous loan to new couples after they get married. And if those people stay married and have healthy, successful families, they get the loan forgiven. But I think the most important thing is whatever specific policy we choose, we've got to just send a message that we're a pro-family country again. There's so many cultural signals that people are looked down upon if they have kids. We got to reverse that. And one of the most important ways to reverse it is to get better, more pro-family policies.